You're watching Guude. You're watching Guude. Fighting just to save our lives. Got you laughing every night.
Welcome back, everybody.
Welcome back. This is my nap time while Guude does all the work. He's working night shift. I'm
we did it.
There we go. I was messing around right here because somebody sent me a really good video of how to make the water source block split into an 8-channel area. But I can't find the video anymore, which is sad. But I also can't get it to work. So
Well, you said they had a dispenser. You don't have a dispenser. I think that's
they had a dispenser, but still, I mean, I think it would in theory be the same as if I just put the block where the dispenser pushed it out.
Well, you
and
said
it pushed
it pointed backwards, right? So was
it
it
pointed backwards. So it was like if this was the dispenser
Oh,
block.
okay.
It pointed this way, and they somehow had it split, and it ended up being 8 wide and went all the way down, just like our 3 wide thing does. And
For some reason, in
can't
my
find the link to
head,
the video
when you said
again.
that, I thought it went into the wall, so to speak. I thought it was some kind of weird.
No, it went. Yeah, because this is just taking. Maybe you can. Maybe it's just a feature of the way the dispensers potentially work.
Yeah, make
Because this, no matter how many times it splits, it's only going to go,
right.
so many blocks down.
Maybe make a dispenser and just see if it makes a difference.
Well, I don't remember exactly how it was done either. As part of the problem, maybe it went down like this somehow. Maybe it was up a block.
Maybe it wasn't even in Minecraft.
It's possible it was in PUBG for sure.
It's sad that game has lost its following.
Has it?
Yeah. It's been
That's a shame.
well, it's a mixture of things.
You're like, whatever. It's not that much of a shame.
No. I mean, it does suck. Because I don't like the games that have taken its place. So it's kind of sad.
Like
Fortnite.
Fortnite. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we're going with the 3 design. Hey, buddy. Oh shoot! There are lots of creepers down there. I should actually. Keep in mind with your picks, since we got such good enchants on them.
Yeah,
don't
I'm
let
not
them
going to. I'm not
break.
gonna. Yeah, I was saying last week we should get mending for them. So I've been putting things away before they break. We can put
Yeah, I just
mending
realized
on
the one silk touch one we have that's really good is coming up on the end, and I would probably use it until it's dead if I didn't think about it. What's our pick chest? There it is. So now I'm not going to be getting. Oh, there's another silk touch one. Never mind. There's an efficiency 3 silk touch. Just doesn't have unbreaking on it. It wasn't one of the really lucky ones. Just somewhat lucky.
So you had anything special happen this week?
I mean, not really. I'll just tell you, to be honest, I'm getting super frustrated at work.
Why?
That's pretty much it. I don't know. It's a whole weird world because what I do is clinical informatics or nursing informatics. And in today's day and age, everything touches the electronic health record anymore. Like we went from when I started at my hospital, we were a completely paper-based system. And then we slowly implemented phases of an electronic system. So yeah, when I started in the ED, it was all paper. Like that's how we documented. Everything was written down on paper.
God.
So it's been a big transition since the time that I've been there. And especially coming from a computer engineering and IT field, I thought it was crazy that it was a paper-based system. But paper-based system does have its benefits for ease of documentation with some things.
But it's hard to find those records, is it not?
Oh, absolutely. It's impossible to find the records. You can't report off of anything. All the back-end stuff ends up being completely manual. But the actual ability to document from somebody who knows how to use the forms exactly how they're supposed to be used, because you can customize, get a graphic designer and customize any type of form in any most efficient way that you want. The same cannot be said about electronic health records because you're basing it on everybody has to fill in the same kinds of fields. We share it between amongst a bunch of facilities. These are the only ability that your EHR vendor allows you to even customize in these ways. It's pretty much like you're documenting an Excel spreadsheet straight on down when you document a patient assessment, and it's very tedious. There's so many fields that are completely pointless to 90% of the cases, but they have to be there and available. So the electronic documentation has its negative impacts as well. But the bigger problem is now that we've expanded on and so many things hit the electronic health record anymore, my department ends up getting basically, there'll be a practice change, which we have a nursing practice department. There'll be a practice change in how you're actually supposed to even administer a specific type of medication. With that practice change comes the need to modify some of the way that you document it in the electronic health record. So those parts of the change, my team has to take to the group for approval and vetting and go through the process and the build and the design. And we have to look at the stuff and make sure it's what was requested. So it expands a lot of work onto my team, but that's why my department exists, is, because that's what we do. The problem is we've been running into the problem lately where the people who request these changes decide that the second it's to us to take into the build team, that we are now responsible for this thing through completion, even through like the education of everybody for this new practice change.
Oh, wow.
So it should not be that way, but that's kind of the thought process on some people, just because, they used to be the ones to have to update the documentation when it was on paper, and then they take the new documentation to the nurses and have to explain how you actually use the new documentation because when they do the training for the change. So it's just trying to get things right in basically a new world of nursing type of deal. And I've been getting a lot of flack from some of my colleagues because they think that me and my department are not on top of our game and not doing the things that we're supposed to be doing and letting the ball drop and causing a problem within the hospital, when really it's just because there's a lack of understanding of how this new system really should be designed. And
what can you do about that? I mean, it's just
that's the problem, and it's really hard to explain to these other groups that really should be responsible the second the build is all done. Okay, build is done. Now it's your responsibility to get this stuff out there. We did what you asked us to do. Now it's your job to finish the implementation of this change, because there's a lot of problems all over the system in which those groups aren't necessarily notified. Because once we take the change in my department up to the level of, okay, this has been approved, it's now up to the next level for building, like the analysts, I don't necessarily even hear much on it anymore, because the analysts actually do the building of it. We say, yep, that's the proper build, and they find the time to implement it when they do. So that we don't even necessarily get made aware that this is all done and set and in there and in the record, let alone to tell like these other people, by the way, your changes are now done. You have to start the next phase. They just expect that we take it on, even though we're kind of like the middlemen.
Okay, so like when I was system administrator, if we would have to build a system for like the techs to use or whatever, we were responsible for documenting how it works. Like they would give us a list of what they needed, then we'd build out something, and then we'd have to document how to use the thing. But then someone below me would be responsible for training them how to use it once they read the documentation. So it wasn't on me to like go over to the building and show the techs how to use said application. But it was on me to document how the application is used.
Here's the biggest problem, though. Nursing informatics, unlike IT, is not IT. So we're not the builders.
Right.
We are literally middlemen between builders and the people making requests.
Well, what I'm getting at is someone higher than the nurses should probably be responsible for documenting how this new system works.
Well, and they might document it. It just doesn't really get distributed anywhere. Or if it does, it'll get distributed somewhere in their system. And a lot of times they will just shoot an email to somebody in the informatics world to be like, oh, by the way, this is done. And nobody really there's no formal control structure of that. So unless my people are like, oh, this got done, I remember that this person is the one that originally asked for this, let's let them know. Sometimes it just goes into a black hole of, oh, this was one of 13 changes that got made in the last hour. What do we do?
Well, it sounds like there's definitely a problem though.
Oh, there's a huge problem. It's a system-wide issue. It's not, and I think I don't think it's even my hospital. I think it's kind of a system-wide issue amongst many, many, many companies at this point, because as sad as it sounds, electronic health records aren't super new, but the implementation of them and the scope of the way they're implemented today is pretty new. And nobody really has good control and structure surrounding that. I mean, hell, like how many, we talked about this before, how many downtime systems did you guys have, or downtime documentation in case, your servers went down and things like that? I mean, I'm the one spearheading that approach because we don't really have a good system surrounding that. And nursing is all based on evidence-based research, evidence-based practice. I have done literature reviews on this. There is like very, very, very little to no information on it because it's not been the forefront of people's minds. They're not IT people. It's for the most part, you got all these, healthcare people trying to implement these electronic documentations. They don't know the nuances of having to make sure like downtime documentation.
Well, see, to me, downtime, from a tech support or server system administration standpoint, downtime is a killer. And then you're talking about people's lives. That should be more important than anything.
Oh, and it's across the industry. It is there, and it's not at the same time. Like it's funny because I think the EHR vendors understand that and try to profit from that. And we have these through my particular EHR vendor. I'll tell people my EHR vendor is Cerner. That's who we purchased our EHR from. Anybody in the medical field who knows will have heard the term Cerner before, I'm sure. Because Cerner and Epic are the two big ones, and we have Cerner. They offer what they call their downtime packages, are called 20 or 724 is what they call them, 7/24. But there's different tiers of this downtime package you can get, and one of them is like after a downtime within 30 minutes, if we need to and have the ability to, we'll switch on this view only system that you'll be able to access. That might be like about anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes out of date from last documentation. It's still hosted where the EHR company is hosting their stuff. So it's still based on, because and all our stuff is hosted at the EHR company. We don't host the stuff locally. So it's all still based on the fact, like if we're having an internet outage, that doesn't help us. Right. Because we can't get out anyway. There's higher level packages that have like these 724 running locally, so that if something and on all the time, you don't have to switch over to it. It's just there and accessible on these units or computers based on the units, that at any given point you can get into the system if the system goes down immediately. We've begged and begged and begged our company to go for that. But it is sad because I don't know what the numbers are. But all they say, and they've looked at contracts and tried to negotiate with Cerner multiple times to get us an upgraded package. But all they keep coming back with is that it's so cost prohibitive they can't go down that route.
That's absurd.
And unfortunately, I'm not in the contract negotiation, so I don't know what their definition of cost prohibitive is. Well, but being that we were a company that was hit by a malware attack in 2016 and lost all of our computerized systems hooked up to our network for over 48 hours.
Yeah.
They're pretty keen on downtime at this point, right. So I think that's the new model, is that the EHR companies are going to try to sell you downtime packages so you don't have to deal with it yourself at a ridiculous cost, to make it so it's unattainable for certain companies.
That just shouldn't be the case. I mean, because again, you're playing with people's lives is all you're doing.
I think there should be legislation that requires an active downtime system to like XXX, specs.
XXX, okay.
To XXX, to a certain level of specs should be required for you to be a certified EHR vendor.
Yeah. Or just, your hospital, well, I guess, okay, so if the legislation was forcing the hospital to do it, they would just raise the prices even more.
I would force the EHR vendors to offer it. Right. Or to have it as part of to be a certified EHR vendor.
It should just be part of any of this. It shouldn't even be something that they're gouging you on. It's bullshit that they are.
I'm sure it takes them time and resources if they wanted to run a secondary system at all times for every
it should just be a requirement that they
have.
I'm sure it does take time and resource and everything. I'm sure they're fucking charging way more than they deserve anyways.
Yeah, I'm sure they are for the I think the biggest selling point for the EHR systems is the fact that they can integrate with a bunch of different systems. So it's not just that I'm documenting my my assessment. I'm also being able to order my labs and medications and all this stuff and whatever like packages you have, I think is the big draw of EHRs. Because, dude, if you saw our documentation system, you would laugh your ass off. You probably wrote better user interface programs to document the same type of data when you were like 4.
Oh, Lord.
It looks like a Microsoft Excel 1995 version spreadsheet sitting on your screen.
Well, I bet part of it also is to keep it real simple so no one can misunderstand what they're doing as well.
Oh, but it makes it 10 times more confusing. And it's funny because pretty much all EHR systems, not all, I don't think Epic is actually, but all the other EHR systems are either glorified billing systems, or Cerner specifically is a glorified lab system. Cerner got into the business because they made the first like lab computerized documentation solution. I can't say the first, but one of the early lab computerized systems. It was specifically for lab specimens. And they expanded upon that, which morphed into an electronic health record system. Because that's where the industry was going. Like I said, most of them are glorified billing platforms. They were originally like registration and billing that they then enhanced to add features about the patients. The chart got in there. And, they were originally like DOS-based systems that they never did like a Windows 10 update do. They just did we'll run kind of when Windows 95 came out, we just made you run this DOS-based system in a DOS window in Windows 95. Woohoo! Look at that. It looks
right. Yeah, I've seen shit like that before, actually. I know what you mean.
When I worked at Starbucks.
Good you're here.
And yeah, I just came back up. I worked at Starbucks in 2001 timeframe. And I got there and I worked at McDonald's when I was back in Michigan, but I was living out in DC doing co-op, and I took a second job at Starbucks to make some more money. And I'd seen the McDonald's system was just running DOS. Like it was a completely DOS-based system that was run straight up from DOS still on like this old 386 computer because, it didn't need anything fancier to run.
Right.
And the guy at Starbucks was all excited and telling me how they just got corporate email. This is like 2000, 2001 timeframe. So that's relatively new to a lot of people that weren't in the tech industry. So he got this like corporate email address now, and he was excited because he found out like I was an IT student and wanted to show me like all the cool stuff in the new system. This is the manager. And he's like, yeah, we used to have this old DOS-based system, and now it's like all Windows, and it's great. And he literally opened it up, and it's Windows 95 on the desktop. And he's like, yeah, check it out, how nice a system like this looks. And he literally opened up. It was a command prompt that was running the original software. It just looked sharper.
Right.
Because Windows was in the background and it was like crisper look. I was like, wow, this is real life.
It's wild how that stuff is always so out of date. Like, I don't know how it happens like that, where it doesn't modernize. Well,
and part of it is if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
Which has some merit to it, but then there's a certain point when if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Sure, but when you got all this new functionality that you now can't implement because you have such an old system that you can't. Oh, so get this. This is fucked up. We have some of the things that you search for to make an order of. We have something called like the plan of care, and they're trying to make everything. It's called IPOC based. It's interdisciplinary plans of care. You initiate these on your patients for whatever type of clinical disease process they have, and it's supposed to guide you with tasks that you should be doing on these patients, Q hour, Q2 hours, like whatever it is, so you can document and it based on the patient's individualized care plan type of deal. There's hundreds of care plans or that you have to implement the appropriate one for your patient. So our nurses, they don't know what they're all called. They're all called weird stuff. So they look up the term plan of care, and then it lists out all the care plans, and they can go through and look at, it's called, ventricular something or other when they were, when they didn't know what something was called. Well, somebody called me complaining the other day because they said, I don't know why, but when I try to look up the specific ventricular care plan, I cannot find it when I look up plan of care. I actually have to type in the word ventricular for it to show up. And I was like, that's weird. I don't know what's going on. Let me put in a request. Something might be broken. They might need to alias something so it shows up. So this gets raised up to the, we open up like a service request to the company because none of our analysts can figure out what is going on. The response we got was, oh yeah, the search will always limit to 99 results. That's hard-coded and we can't change that. Not kidding.
God damn.
Yep. Thank you, Cerner. I appreciate your assholishness answer since we're stuck with you because, like, we have a contract with them. We poured all this money in with them. They basically have anybody by the balls who implements their system throughout their system, and then they just tell you no.
I mean, that's a limitation of the software they've written, and it's just a dumb one.
Yep.
That's
and
ridiculous.
It's hard coded. That's what we always get the words. Oh, that's hard coded. Like, is that just the excuse that they use because nobody knows how to change it?
Who hard coded it? Fire them.
well, and the thing is, it was probably hard coded back when it was a lab system.
Right. It's probably hard coded whenever there was some limitation to the database or some shit that doesn't exist anymore.
Yep. Or when they wrote the thing back in machine language back in like the 60s or
Punch
whatever.
cards. Oh, fucking hell.
Yeah, like that's it. If you, as a technologically inclined person, came into the healthcare industry on the back end to see like the shit that you deal with trying to implement and maintain electronic health records, you would be baffled.
I mean, it's frustrating from someone just from my point of view because I know these are things that, I might die one day just because shit's not together the way it should be. Basically. I would agree with that. I definitely think that as much as it's helped because it adds so many items, it's such a fine line because it's added all the items such as like, I want to go back all the way, allergy checking. Like if you ordered a medication on a piece of paper like we used to do and you happen to be allergic to it, even if I wrote the allergy directly above the medication, I'm going to give you that. There's no intermediary step that's going to warn me that you are allergic to that medication, right.
Like except for the patient saying, I don't want that because I'm allergic to that type of deal. In an electronic health record system, I scan the medication with what we call, PPID and barcode medication administration. So it's positive patient identification and then barcode medication administration. The system's going to be like, your patient's allergic to this medication. So it clearly helps with things like that. And it helps with like making the record easy to, if the doctor's off site and I'm telling them there's a problem with the patient, I'm calling it at home, the attending physician, hey, there's a problem with your patient. They can log in and look at what's going on. They don't have to rely on me to going through everything on the chart.
Right.
With them. So EHRs definitely have a positive aspect for sure. But then there's so many things that are just so much harder to do that make it more unsafe. And then with the fact that people are now relying on a system with positive patient identification, like I don't need to do a double check. Granted, you're supposed to, but people get out of the habit of doing an actual physical. I'm going to ask you what your name is. I'm going to compare your name to the armband. I'm going to ask you what your birth date is. I'm going to compare that to the armband, compare that to the order. You're supposed to do all that still. But when I have a piece of hardware that I scan your wristband and I scan the medication and it says, yep, this is the medication that's ordered for this patient, people lose that basic concept of the common nursing judgment because you're basically making the computer make all your decisions for you. Right. So when something isn't quite right, nobody knows what the fuck to do anymore because they don't have that practice.
Right. Relying on the computer, that's a system that's not too great as it is.
Right. So it's got I would bet you in 10 years from now, nurses are going to be considered like way more incompetent than they are today because they're going to be so out of practice with actually having any type of nursing judgment because the computer's expected to do it all. And they're trying to really take nursing judgment away from nurses completely because doctors should be writing the orders. Nurses should be carrying out the orders. There should be no middle ground. However, they will still yell at the nurse if the doctor writes an inappropriate order and the nurse carries it out. That was the nurse's responsibility.
That's kind of bullshit.
Yeah, that's the way it is.
I mean, the nursing profession could probably go the way of I don't want to equate nursing to fast food person, but they could go that direction where they're not as needed there's a lot
Well,
less needed. Like computers could be
for
taking.
the judgment aspect, yeah. And if you replace the nurses with like patient care techs or somebody else that was skilled to like do IV insertions and things like that, or do the because there's a lot of tasks that need to be done on patients who are physically ill.
Right.
Somebody has to physically do the stuff. But when you take away the judgment that nursing school teaches you about what the fuck it means to be a nurse, like when that stuff goes out the window, yeah, you don't need a nurse anymore. You need just a tech that can come in and get paid less money and just do the physical tasks. You just got to train them to do the tasks that they previously didn't do because the nurses did it.
Right.
No, yeah, I completely see the industry shifting that direction at some point, and it's sad.
Well, I mean, if in your case, at least you have the degrees and the everything to not just do one thing.
That's one of the reasons I'm getting my doctorate degree is because I'm future proofing because I don't know where this industry is going to go.
Right.
This industry could go crazy.
Oh, I suppose you can be a seafood bowlsman.
I could be a seafood bowlsman. I like the term seafood bowlsman. It sounds pretty cool.
Oh, man. Well, I guess with that, we should end today's episode.
All right, guys. See you
Thanks
next
for
time.
watching.